Are you ready to become a change maker? Our 48-week postgraduate program in public policy or the PGP may be just the thing for you. This hybrid program is designed to give you both the theoretical foundation and hands-on experience needed to excel in policy making. With a mix of expert-led webinars, in-person workshops, and policy simulation exercises, you'll gain real-world skills along with personalized mentorship. Through our policy programs, we connect good people to good ideas and good networks. Apply now at the link in the description to make an impact.
Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast by the Takshashila Institution. We are a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like bringing fresh perspectives to Indian affairs and Indian perspectives to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of All Things Policy from the Takshashila Institution. I'm Yamini, your host for today, and I'm the Assistant Program Manager for the Law Enforcement and Policing Fellowship here at Takshashila. Today's episode dives into conversation on how technology is changing the game in law enforcement and policing. So joining us on this episode is Mr. Javeed Ahmed, an adjunct distinguished fellow at Takshashila. Mr. Ahmed is a retired IPS officer from the 84 batch of Uttar Pradesh cadre with an impressive 37 years of experience in leadership and law enforcement. His experience or expertise spans across anti-corruption investigations, policy planning, crisis management, and security management. So in today's episode, we'll be discussing the impact of technology in law enforcement and policing in India. So we'll also explore a little bit on how technology has transformed policing over the last decade and the significant tools that are implemented by Indian police forces in today's time, and how we can strike a balance between public safety and individual rights in tech-driven policing landscape. Welcome to the show, Mr. Javed. It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Good afternoon, Yamini. It's a pleasure to be back at the podcast by Takshashila, All Things Policy. And it's a very interesting topic today because something that each one of the citizens of this country and policy planners especially need to understand that while technology is being adapted and adopted by the police, it has its own repercussions and limitations, and new regulatory parameters have to be devised as we go along.
Yes, definitely. Thanks for joining me, Mr. Ahmed. So, over the last decade, technology has transformed the way the crimes are being detected or investigated and even prevented for that matter. So, from AI driven surveillance to predictive policing, technology is shaping the future of law enforcement. So, this also means that it has few challenges, which we'll get to later. So, starting with how has technology changed policing in India over the last decade?
Yeah, I would start by saying that it's not only the last decade. At least for the last 20-25 years, when technology has entered the lives of each one of us in India and across the globe, because the police has to deal with a society which is now driven increasingly by technology. The police have responded and adopted and adapted technology for their own use for the last 20-25 years. To give you an example, a very ambitious program in the police department across the country is the CCTNS, the Crime Control Tracking Network System. This was started sometime in the 2007-2008 period, which intends to record every FIR that is registered across the country in electronic format. And through that, a host of other kinds of information are made available to the police officers who can use it for analyzing trends, patterns of crime, etc. So this has been going on for some time, but yes, as technology becomes increasingly, is changing and has become sophisticated in the last 10 to 15 years. The police has had to adopt new technologies because the people who are now committing the crime are, in fact, one step ahead, as it always happens. In order to combat crime and in order to ensure law and order and crowd management, technology has been increasingly and widely used by the police. For example, the use of mobile phones by almost everyone in the urban areas, especially the youth, the spread of social media and its impact on lives of many people in the public sphere uh, have had huge impacts. Secondly, the increase in the financial transactions through the electronic mode have opened up a new chapter as far as cyber financial frauds are concerned. So the police has been responding to this, to these phenomena, as these challenges have come up. While, as I said earlier, often the police is behind the curve, but the space at which technology is being adopted and adapted to Indian conditions has been in the pace has increased, and I must say that increasingly now there's a recognition even at the topmost levels in state capitals and in the national capital that technology is an increasingly essential ingredient for crime control and for maintenance of law and order, including national security.
Interesting. The transformation has been quite remarkable, like you mentioned. So, since we spoke about police force adapting to these technology, what do you think are the challenges police force face to adapt to this technology?
So let me answer this question by taking the example of financial frauds.
Hmm.
We now know that whether it is through mobile based devices or through laptops or through other fixed electronic devices like PCs, individuals across the country are linking their bank accounts and accessing their bank accounts over the internet. This opens a huge area for the banks. Firstly, for the banks to ensure that all the data that they have with them is safe. So the use of cybersecurity protocols has had to increase manyfold. And while banks have been doing it, the fact of the matter is that the greed of certain individuals who want to make a quick buck and the continued mischief of the criminal have allowed, and the use of increasingly sophisticated technology has allowed cyber crimes to happen across the country in huge numbers. And the result is, as far as the challenge is concerned, the challenge for the police is that the absolute deluge of cyber crimes has made it difficult for the police, despite their efforts, to match up to the demand for investigation of cyber crimes, and that does cause a lot of pain to a number of people. But as I said, this is a work in progress as far as the police is concerned. Every police department in the country, every state police, is very promptly and very vigorously increasing its capability to identify and to prevent cyber financial crime. The other area where I would like to highlight, which is a very relevant and recent phenomena, is the huge Kumbh Mela that was completed in Prayagraj in Uttar Pradesh just less than a month ago. There are reports that over 65 crore individuals went for the pilgrimage. Now, that kind of huge crowd involves very, very intense monitoring and crowd control, and also to ensure that mischievous elements within the country and outside the country don't use this pious occasion to create any nuisance. So, we go along in this podcast, I will talk in some detail about the kind of measures that the Uttar Pradesh police adopted to make the Kumbh safe, not only in terms of crowd control, but also in terms of various other attacks on the cyber system and the information system that had been set up to manage the crowd. And the third area that I want to talk about is about the presence of emergency response vehicles in almost all states in the country. This system that puts the use of GPS. The GPS technology is used to guide police response vehicles in a very prompt manner in limited time to the victim who makes a phone call to the emergency response control room. Like in the US, where you have 100, you are aware that in India we have 112.
Right.
Anyone anywhere in the country dials up 112, and the state police has the system which is GPS based and all that. They are able to identify the place from where the call has come, and then they are able to in real time they're able to identify the closest emergency response vehicle, and they are able to send it to the spot. At least in Uttar Pradesh, which I am familiar with, in urban areas, the response is less than 7 minutes, and in the rural areas, because of the roads being not that widespread, the network being not that widespread, the response is about 14 to 15 minutes, and they receive lakhs of calls, thousands of calls every day. So these are just three examples. There would be many, many more. But what I'm trying to emphasize is that technology is being used almost on a daily basis by the police forces of different states to enhance their capacity. It works as a force multiplier, basically. And the whole purpose is to counter the new challenges to policing, including to national security.
Right. That's a brilliant overview of the how police would face the challenges in technology. And also coming to that, I you just mentioned about GPS vehicles and police adapting the GPS technology. I was wondering if that comes under predictive policing.
Predictive policing is slightly different, Yamini. Predictive policing is about using data of the last, 5 years, 3 years, whatever it may be, and trying to identify the patterns of crime, not only in terms of the areas where the crime is happening, but also the time of the day, the season, the other patterns that may emerge about what kind of crime is happening in which area. Uh, so that the deployment of the police force, as you know, police force in terms of numbers is always limited. And I mentioned to you earlier that technology has become the force multiplier. So the whole idea behind predictive policing is to deploy resources at the place or in the area where there is more chance of crime happening, or traffic snarl happening, or anything that can inconvenience the public. So predictive policing is about analyzing data, legacy data, and trying to figure out where and at what time what kind of crime would happen, and deploying resources to prevent that kind of event from happening.
Right. So going forward, like digging a little deep into that topic, do you think predictive policing would actually reduce the crime rate, or would it lead to wrongful targeting?
I don't know whether it will reduce crime rate, but it will definitely result in better utilization of police force, of the police resources that are available. You see, what happens is that the criminal who's on the other side is also aware of the activities of the police. They also realize that the police at such and such time will be active in so and so area, so that they may change their plans and try to strike somewhere else. So that's a cat and mouse game that the police and the criminals keep playing. So in the short run, it may prevent a crime from happening in a particular area which was more vulnerable to that crime in the past.
Hmm.
But that is the whole game of cat and mouse. The criminal will strike where they find the police is not there in sufficient numbers, and they will try to catch the police by surprise. And so, not just the criminal. I mean, we are talking about in these days and times, the activities of anti-nationals is always something that the police forces across the country and the intelligence department resources across the country are aware and active, and they are also trying to find out patterns. Now, anything that falls in that pattern may be possible to prevent, and that is why it is called preventive policing. Prevent something that could have happened, but the criminal too has the advantage of surprise. uh, Targeting, you mentioned about targeting. I don't think targeting is something that comes with is a corollary of predictive policing. Targeting is a problem that is already emerging due to the use of the facial recognition technology. That is another technology that is being used very widely by police forces across the country, and because of the historical biases of the data and of the information that has been fed into the making of the software, there have been reports not only in India but in other countries as well, that there are possibilities that facial recognition technology has biases towards someone, towards certain categories and against certain categories. So that is something that we have to guard against. And I suppose as we go along, there's more data available. These discrepancies will be addressed. To what extent they'll be addressed, only time will tell. But right now, facial recognition technology is used widely, but it has the hidden mischief and the hidden possibility of targeting or having some kind of confirmation bias against a particular set of people or a particular kind of people, and that is something that police forces need to be always aware of, and policy planners need to identify these areas where the facial recognition technology has its limitations and point that out so that the police of departments and the policymakers are educated about these.
Right. It's very interesting. Also, since all of this is largely based on data, I was wondering this raises privacy concerns. So, if you could tell us what happens to our data when the law enforcement, when our data is being collected, basically, and then we can go about, yeah, where do we draw the line between public safety and individual privacy?
Uh, there's this very famous quote by Benjamin Franklin, who was the president of the US, and he said that once you start giving up on privacy, it is only a matter of time that your freedom also goes, or something to that effect. But the fact of the matter is that in today's times, technology has become so advanced and it is being deployed so widely across various countries, including in India, that to expect that there will be no surveillance is, I don't think that's a fair expectation now. Now, in the Puttuswamy case, a very famous case of 2017, which was decided by the Honorable Supreme Court, the Supreme Court recognized privacy as one of the ingredients of the right to life, and therefore one of the ingredients of the fundamental rights that every citizen has. So it is now incumbent upon everyone who's using these technologies of surveillance to pass the three-way test that the Puttuswamy judgment has placed on anyone who's using those. And those 3 points that the surveilling agencies have to look at is A, that the purpose for doing the surveillance has to be legitimate. It has to be proportionate to the kind of threat that is perceived to be there. And thirdly, that the surveillance process has to be legal. It has to follow the legally prescribed norms. Now, to give you the example of the legitimate aim, while suppose there is a situation where there is an apprehension of a violent attack by extremist elements. In those circumstances, widespread surveillance of through facial recognition or of telephones or mobile phones would be a justified, response of the government. So, whereas if the apprehension is that no, the allegation is that there are some young boys or miscreants who are misbehaving with girls while they are going to or coming from school or college or whatever. You cannot justify doing mass surveillance in that situation. So there has to be a proportionality. While legality is one thing, proportionality is another. The response has to be in proportion to the danger or the apprehension of danger that is foreseen. So, when police departments or other agencies of the government are doing surveillance, they have to be very conscious of the privacy of the individual. Now, another this is one area where the lines are still hazy and fuzzy, and as policy individuals, students of public policy, increasingly there's a need for a more granular understanding of what can be allowed, keeping in mind the Puttaswamy judgment, and what cannot be allowed, and more importantly, what are the measures that need to be taken and specified, what are the SOPs that need to be outlined so that the possibility of misuse of the increasingly intrusive technologies that the state has acquired, these are not, used in such a way that they fail the Puttaswamy three-way test and thereby impinge or infringe into the privacy of the individual. That is one area where work is still going on. The ideas and the thoughts are still in the at a nascent stage. Recently, there has been that a new bill which is being discussed about data protection and other related matters, and these issues will be resolved. Now, in the a related point I want to talk about is about that once data is acquired or collected by the agencies or the police department, what happens to it? I mean, it is expected that once the data has been acquired and it has been used for the purpose that was meant to be used, it should be destroyed so that it is not misused at a later stage or it does not fall into the wrong hands. So that is another area where the rules and the SOPs are fuzzy. They are not very clearly laid out, and I would believe that that is one area where once again more research and more thought needs to be given. So these are, as I said, emerging areas, but these are areas which require increasing amount of debate and thought to be given to these.
Oh, that's very insightful. Also, when you were talking about data protection bill, which was introduced initially in 2023, but it's when I was researching on this, I just figured out that it's still not operational, and there is no single accountable body, to have accountability towards these data. So, why do you think it's still not operational, and there is no single?
Yeah, it's not operational, Yamini, because the balance between the security of the state and the privacy of the individual, that balance is still to be kind of identified. And one challenge there is that while on one hand the attempt of the state, any state, is to have an expansion of its powers, civil rights, activists and lawyers, and every citizen, I suppose, does not want that kind of intrusion to happen. Technology now gives huge powers, huge capabilities to the state to acquire these, to collect information about each one of us. And in a situation where the storage of that data and the arrangement so that though that data is not misused is still not very clear. The challenge of finding that balance will continue to be there, and I suppose as we go along, some kind of clarity will come. But that is definitely an area where a lot of debate is happening and will continue to happen till we find that golden balance.
Mm. Yeah. And speaking of digital data and Data Protection Act, like you mentioned earlier, let's also talk about cybercrime. So, are current cybercrime laws sufficient, or do you think they're outdated and in the technology that we are using today?
The laws are there, and the laws will keep getting amended and modified as we go along. The challenge, as far as cybercrime is concerned, is that on the one hand, those who are the repositories of all the data, that is the banks and the insurance companies and others who store their data in their on their servers, they need to be much more conscious and cognizant of the fact that this data may be just data for them, but for each individual, it is their life. In terms of it may unravel many things about them that they don't want to be unraveled in the public domain, and they don't want it to go into the hands of those who can misuse it. So the first requirement is that banks and other institutions that are involved in the financial world are much more conscious of their responsibility as the repositories of that data, and ensure that their systems are more and more strong, and the vulnerability and the penetration of hackers and others into that system is more and more difficult. What is called the audit, VAPT audit, is called the vulnerability and penetration audit, which is done. So that's the first part. The second part is that individuals, each one of us, who are using financial, who are using the internet to do our financial dealings, we need to be much more conscious. Need to be much more aware of the protocols that are provided as safety for using that medium to do our financial transactions. Unfortunately, there are many people who are either lax or ignorant or get greedy and fall into the trap of those who want to lure them into doing something which is against their best interest. There are still a lot of people who are gullible enough to fall for a trap where someone says that your money will give you handsome returns, and if you do this, and ultimately, that promise turns out to be, just a fraudulent trick, and a person gets ripped. Then there are people who, despite so much of public information and education by various agencies, fall into the trap of what is now called digital arrest. It is an absolute trauma for the person who loses money and has to go through what is called a digital arrest. There have been so many programs and campaigns by the government and by the banks and others on TV and on newspapers and all that about what this so-called digital arrest is. It's an absolute sham. There's nothing called digital arrest, but still people do get conned into this digital arrest situation, and they lose a huge amount of money. And there are educated people. I'm aware of professors and doctors and engineers and other people who are well educated, who one would expect to be much more conscious of and cognizant of and alert about any attempt to kind of cheat them. They fall for it for some reason and lose huge amounts of money. So that is one aspect. The public needs to be much more, one is the banks, which need to be much more robust in their in keeping the data. The two is the public, it needs to be much more alert and responsible. And the third is the police. The police needs to be increasingly more efficient in handling instances of cybercrime. As I said at the beginning of this podcast, the sheer volume of these cases uh, makes it very difficult for the police to work out these cases, and that causes a lot of pain to a large number of people who have lost money. The I would like to add that in these cases, what is happening is that the network, the people who are committing the crime, and the network through which they are committing the crime may be spread across, two, three, four, five states of the country. Even some of it could be even outside the country. And the server through which they have been making this VPN call could be in Moscow or Uganda or wherever it is, and they would be sitting somewhere. Recently, a set of people were caught who are sitting in Myanmar and frauding people in India. So, what I'm trying to highlight is that because of the nature of the crime, which is spread across geographies within and without and outside the country, the challenge for the police is that much more. So, these are the three issues that are to be kept in mind when we are talking about cybercrime, about why it is happening, and what is possible to be done and what needs to be done.
Thank you. That was a really fantastic insight. Also, you mentioned earlier that you would want to talk about the surveillance or the large gathering that happened at Kumbh Mela. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think we need to go through what was done to make the Kumbh Mela safe and to have a very successful Kumbh Mela, which was, in terms of crowd, is supposed to have been one of the largest ever crowds. So there were two aspects to it. I'll just briefly talk about it, and I will not give many specifics because that would not be in the best interest of those who are running those systems. I am out of that system, but I still have some access to the information. So with that caveat, I mean, I can tell you that, for example, the most important thing that had to be done was to ensure that the integrated command and control center, which had been set up by the police department, which was getting thousands and thousands of feeds from various cameras and other devices which had been installed across the whole Kumbh area, that this system itself is secure, that it is not infiltrated or hacked, and that the information that is coming from the various sources continues to come in an unabated, uninterrupted, and pure form. So this required continuous, almost real time monitoring of the data to ensure that there was no attack to infiltrate the system and to hijack the information that was coming. So this is, I mentioned earlier about the auditing of the security of the system, a real time auditing of the security of the system through what is called the VAPT, vulnerability and penetration test. This was done, and through this, I can tell you that there were hundreds of attacks from various sources across the world every day, and these had thwarted so that the real data could come to the people who are taking the decisions, and the decisions were made on the basis of data which was reliable and robust. So that was one thing that we all need to understand. The other thing was, once you understand that there are certain internet IP addresses that are making these attacks, you have to counter that by neutralizing those IP addresses. All these are technical things which I, for example, don't know how it is done, but I know that the the uh, the IP addresses from where the attacks originate are tracked, and then they are neutralized. So this kind of activity was full time, real time, exercise. And once all this data was procured and it came to the Central Command and Control Center. It was analyzed to so that the people, the officers who were monitoring the crowd could understand the density of the crowd, the flow of the crowd, the pattern of movement of the crowd, so that exit points could be either, increased or the entry points could be decreased so that in any given area there was no excessive crowd, more crowd than could be handled in that area. Similarly, for vehicles, the parking lots were monitored to ensure that each parking lot was closed once space was not available, and the second parking lot was made available so that there's no jamming of the roads and traffic keeps moving. The third and the most important thing was that on the ghat where the actual bathing was being done, the density of the crowd was monitored and on real time basis, and it was ensured that not more than a benchmark density was allowed to gather over there, because otherwise it could have led to some disaster or some unfortunate incident. So these are the kind of things that were happening on real time. There were drones that were deployed to give an overall view from the aerial view of the crowd, how it was moving. The important thing in any crowd is that it has to be kept moving. The clue or the trick to crowd management is that the crowd should keep moving. A static crowd becomes a panicked crowd, and a panicked crowd leads to stampede. I mean, that's the kind of formula that crowd control experts have to keep in mind. And the barricades had been set up at various places. And the whole idea was that if there's a crowd which is starting to get static, you create a loop somewhere else so the crowd goes into that loop and keeps moving. The crowd does not mind moving, but if it is stopped and it feels that they're getting pushed from the back and they can't go ahead because of the crowd in front of them, and then they panic. So that is the kind of thing that was done on a real time basis. Obviously, this was done in cooperation and very close coordination with a number of agencies. UP Police was coordinating with various other agencies of the intelligence agencies of the government, with the railways, because a lot of people were coming through trains, through the roadways department, because people were coming going through roadways buses. There was communication and coordination with neighboring states, because Allahabad or Prayagraj is very close to at least Madhya Pradesh and to Bihar and some areas of Jharkhand. So that kind of coordination with those states was happening on a 24/7 basis. So these activities were happening. Plus, drones were being used to drop lifeguards to people who had who gone into deep waters and had there was possibility of drowning. So there were drones carrying lifeguards and dropping it close to the person who had gone deep into the water and was there was a fear that we would drown. So various activities were happening, and a lot of these activities were driven by the use of various technologies. GPS was used, AI was used, surveillance was used, data analytics was used. All these various technologies were, as I said initially, the integrated command and control center was getting all these feeds and using various tools, whether it was AI or GPS or data analytics, to make sense of all the data that was coming. The data ultimately has to be analyzed, and actionable points have to come out of it, and that actionable point has to be used by officers to issue instructions on the ground.
Right. That's a really great insight towards how technology should also be held accountable or actionable. Also, coming to the last part of the podcast, I know this is a very vast topic that we chose. Still, I just want to ask if you suggest any regulatory measures, or would you recommend any innovation that could enhance law enforcement and policing in India in the near future?
Yamini, that's a very interesting point, because one challenge that the police forces face is that every state has its own police as per the constitution and as per the law of the land. And the one issue that comes up now is that while policing may be a state subject, the criminals and the challenges that come from a modern society which is integrated with each other is that crime and other security related challenges, they are not state specific. So while technology is being used, there is no platform where the various states kind of can meet with all their technologies and work towards solving a problem. It is easier said than done because there are challenges to state police cooperating and working in coordination with its neighboring police or with other police forces. This is a result of a very difficult and fractured political environment. Uh, and various other, there's some police may be working in a particular language. Tamil Nadu police may be working in Tamil, and Maharashtra police may be working in Marathi, and the UP police in Hindi. So there are a number of challenges to real time and very close, coordination. The second issue is that every state wants to enhance. I mentioned earlier, every state wants to enhance its capacity and capability to collect data. And we mentioned earlier, the courts don't look kindly upon that, and rightly so, because the fundamental right of every individual is sacrosanct, and the courts are there to preserve and to protect those rights, and therefore that kind of balance, that golden balance we talked about, we are still to arrive there. I think we have to keep working on that.
Great. So that's all for today's episode. A big thank you to you, Mr. Javed, for joining me and sharing such valuable insights. I really enjoyed today's podcast, and I also got to learn about a lot of things that I had very limited knowledge about. If you have anything else to say or share, you can share. Otherwise, we could end on this note.
Yeah, we'll probably do it at a later time when we break down this different issues that we discussed here, and probably have more detailed discussion on each of those issues.
All right. Thank you for your time and sharing such valuable content. This was a great session.
It's been a pleasure, Yamini. Thank you.
If you liked our show, dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs. Check us out at our Twitter handle @Takshashila INST or our website takshashila.org.in.